Hello everyone, and as always, welcome back to my channel. Or if it's your first time, welcome to my channel. My name is Marlene and I talk about eating disorder recovery and everything related to healing the relationship with your own body, with food and with movement. And before we start into this video, I would really love to hear which other topics you want me to talk about. If you like my videos, it's always super helpful if you give them a like. I know this sounds very shallow, but it's really helpful. Of course, if you follow me, if you like what I'm talking about. And yeah, let's dive right into the topic as we always do. And somebody recently asked me, how do I explain extreme hunger to a doctor or to a therapist? And it can be incredibly hard and intimidating, especially that therapist-client relationship or also that doctor-patient relationship. Oftentimes we feel like those are people in a certain authority role, and if they don't believe me, or if they say my extreme hunger is something else, is binge eating for instance, or is overeating, or is bad, that can be incredibly hard. And so I think this question is so important, and I hope I can give you some guidance today as to how to explain extreme hunger to people in those roles. I did talk about extreme hunger a lot. For those of you who are new here, I had an eating disorder myself. I recovered from that and I went through a very long time of extreme hunger. It's always hard to put like an exact timeline on it, but it was probably 2.5 to 3 years of extreme hunger. Extreme hunger, just very short, is a phenomenon that can happen after any time of restriction, oftentimes after a prolonged time of restriction, but everybody is different and reacts differently to restriction. And it can either come up as physical extreme hunger, which means you're feeling constantly hungry, you're feeling like a bottomless pit, you feel like you can eat the whole world, you consume maybe thousands and thousands of calories a day, and it feels like it's not getting better. And you're also mentally hungry, which means you're constantly thinking about food. Maybe you're physically full, but you still think about food and you would like to be able to eat more. And a lot of people feel very out of control. They get very scared, especially if you are in recovery from an eating disorder, which oftentimes is driven by trying to avoid eating too much or trying to avoid consuming too many calories, being afraid of weight gain. Of course, extreme hunger can be an incredibly hard phase. And the least you want to hear from a professional is, what is that? You're making that up. You're eating too much. Because a lot of people already feel a lot of guilt or shame when they are in extreme hunger. And I want you to know extreme hunger is such a common response. And it's crazy to me that I feel like we're just now starting to talk more about it. I mean, I know a lot of people who have been talking about extreme hunger for decades, but it's still crazy to me because I know so many people who are going through extreme hunger or who went through extreme hunger in their recovery, and they did get out of it and they do feel so much better now, and it was all okay to listen to it. So just a little wrap up. The roots of extreme hunger are as well physical as also mental. So the physical roots are oftentimes that our body will react to any kind of malnutrition or even like starvation with a lot of fear. Your body thinks that it's in danger, which it also is. If you're under eating, you're putting your body in danger, and your body basically thinks there's a scarcity going on. Your body doesn't know if you are on a diet or if you have an eating disorder or if there is no food around. And your body's main instinct is to survive. Everything your body does instinctively is because it wants you to survive. And so once extreme hunger hits, that is a survival instinct. Your body wants to make sure, okay, now food seems to be available, so we want to make sure that we eat. And I'm gonna send you all those signals in order to make sure that you really understand that you have to eat, because maybe you don't understand. So I'm gonna send physical hunger, but I'm also gonna send mental hunger. On a little bit more scientific base, which might be helpful, especially when you talk to professionals, a lot of our hormones also have to do. So there are the common hunger hormones and satiety hormones, ghrelin and leptin. Ghrelin is our hunger hormone, which of course spikes after a certain amount of malnutrition. A lot of people might still say they don't feel like a lot of hunger cues, which can also be the case, but a lot of people also feel that extreme hunger because their ghrelin is spiking, and because everything is out of whack and your body is so deprived and all it wants you to do is to eat. And then there's leptin, which actually requires fat cells to be produced. So if you already lost weight, and that doesn't mean that you have to be quote unquote underweight by BMI standards, your personal body's requirements for fat cells might be different than the requirements for someone else. But if your body loses a certain amount of fat and has less fat cells, it can be hard for the body to produce leptin. And a little side note here, that doesn't mean that you just gain weight and then immediately after gaining weight, your body's leptin production is perfectly fine again. For a lot of people, that actually needs a lot of time, where they also need to stay at a certain weight so that their body can actually begin to feel safe again. Another thing is that your body will not start repairing until it is at a certain baseline. Because your body wants you to survive so badly, it will not just as soon as you start eating put all of that energy into repairing. And there's a lot of stuff that can happen, and your doctor should know that, but sadly I've been confronted with a lot of doctors that doesn't quite know that. There's a lot of things that can happen internally due to malnutrition that you can't even see on the outside. And just because you gain weight doesn't mean you're healthy again. Your bones, your muscles, your organs, your hormones, your metabolism, there is so much going on that you can't see on the outside that is impacted by malnutrition. And again, malnutrition doesn't mean completely depriving yourself until the very end. Malnutrition can also mean just not eating enough for your body's needs, and they can vary. Please do not think it's just those 2,000 calories that we've been told at one point. Your body calories needs can really vary. And so your body will not just put all of that energy that it's finally getting again when you start eating into repairing already. Your body needs to feel safe. Your body needs to make sure that we're surviving first, that we have the bare minimum to survive before we even put energy into repairing, which is also where overshoot weight comes in. So a lot of bodies hold on to a little bit more fat for a certain amount of time because they just want to make sure fat basically saves the most amount of energy. And so your body wants to make sure that it has enough energy reserves in order to start repairing, because your body is also very smart and your body keeps the score. Maybe you've heard that term before. So if your body has been through a traumatic experience of malnutrition, and malnutrition is always traumatic for the body, it will remember that and it will not feel as safe. So for somebody who has been through restriction and who has been through malnutrition, your body will most likely take even longer to trust you because it had that bad experience in the past, and so it will make sure to hold on to a little bit more fat. Of course, metabolism can also play a role here. As we know, our body adapts, our metabolism adapts. Our metabolism is never breaking, but it will adapt if we're not eating enough, and it can oftentimes take some time for the metabolism to speed up again, so that can also play a role. And also, a lot of people struggle, for instance, with certain hormones in their recovery. It's very, very common for a lot of people to struggle with hypothyroidism, which in many cases can actually go back to normal after a certain amount of time. So you see, and again, your doctor should know that your body is just so intelligent and there are so many aspects that play a role here. And for some people, if your doctor is willing to even look into that, I really suggest showing them the Minnesota starvation experiment. I made a lot of videos on that here on this channel. It's really, honestly, pretty clear. It actually shows how any amount of malnutrition can actually lead to post-starvation hyperphagia. It can also make sense to use those terms here because, sometimes people like to hear the professional terms, even though extreme hunger is just as valid. And when it comes to your therapist, I think it would also make sense to maybe go into why they think it's not extreme hunger and why they think it's important. Because sadly, some therapists seem to think that if somebody goes from, for instance, a restrictive eating disorder into extreme hunger, that it's just a change of eating disorders and they will just start binging. And so they see that as very symptomatic, when oftentimes it can be the opposite. Luckily, I worked with a therapist when I was in my recovery who was absolutely amazing. I didn't even have anything, had to explain anything to him. But before that, I also worked with a very, very shitty therapist. So in that case, I wouldn't even really talk to her about those symptoms and about what I was going through. When, after that, when I had a good therapist, he literally just said, oftentimes the pendulum has to swing a certain direction. And every therapist should know that, because that is very, very common in psychology overall, but also for your body. Like, your body's pendulum has to swing into the other direction a little bit, which means has to eat more and has to hold on to more body weight. And so I really hope this was helpful. I really hope you can maybe take some notes, or again, show your doctor or your therapist stuff about post-starvation hyperphagia. There is more and more research out there. There are blog posts about it out there. There is the Minnesota starvation experiment. For some people, it might also be interesting to see other people who have been through it and who talk about it. There's a lot of blog posts out there from people who have experienced post-starvation hyperphagia and that are saying like, hey, this is how I felt. These were my symptoms, but I had to go through this. And now I'm at this point and I have a very, very healthy way of eating. And again, extreme hunger is not an unhealthy way of eating. And last but not least, 2 more tips. The first one, I know that's not always that simple. I'm not going to make it as everyone has access to, an abundance of doctors or therapists. But if you really, really feel misunderstood by your doctor or by your therapist, I think it's always worth looking into that and looking into changing, just like I did. And again, I know the system varies from country to country, but I think that could make sense for a lot of people. And second of all, and I know this one might be a little bit harder because of what I said in the beginning and like authority figures, you don't have to convince every person. And this might actually be part of your recovery already. For me, that was actually part of my recovery, knowing that there are people who might not understand extreme hunger, but still allowing myself to follow it. You don't have to convince everybody as long as you know what you're doing. And again, it's also fine to look for someone else who might have a better understanding of that. Please let me know in the comments if this was helpful, if you have any other questions as to that topic, and I will see you in the next one.